Welcome everybody to our channel today. We are going to be talking with Mark Leib. Hello, Mark. How are you?
Hi, Maria. Good morning. Well, thanks.
Yeah, Mark is a harmonic design consultant, and we're going to be talking about connecting with the vitalizing rhythms of the earth. And why is Mark here? Well, Mark is here because he specializes in the creation of high vibration spaces to optimize well-being and healing and to bring us back into this connection that we're going to talk about. He's a designer, geobiologist, geometer, and sacred space builder of the European tradition of harmonic building. He will be talking later about what it is, and we'll probably go deeper into this in future talks that we'll be doing. It's really, to give you an introduction, it's a 1,000-year-old lineage that holds timeless earth wisdom and advanced nature-based design knowledge from the Vedic, the Arabic, and the Celtic cultures. So it's kind of all over the world. And it's basically the knowledge of how things were built to be healthy. Mark is the only person also in the United Kingdom to have completed professional certification in this tradition, and is offering its unique services and teaching its methods here in the UK and also in Spain. He will be talking also about the projects that he's doing and how he's building up this architecture, healing architecture there and here. He applies these methods of the tradition in bioenergetic research projects, utilizing radiesthesia, GDV biofield testing technology, and biophilic design. We'll tell you more about it, but just to give a short vision, it's how to also maybe grow food in a different, more healthy and better environment, and to be more healthy ourselves, knowing where to sleep, where to stay in a healthy state in our own houses. He has over 20 years of international experience, and he's an award-winning interior architect and design director, creates visionary environments for private residences, global brands, and hospitality destinations. And we'll be talking about a project that I know personally, and he's been working in it. And it's an amazing proposal here in Somerset, which is called Earth Light. And we'll be also talking more about what is going on there and why is it so revolutionary, and a proposal for a change, a suggestion for a change in society and what is about to come. So we're going to also talk about all these shifts that are happening in society, in the earth, and why these projects are so important. So I'm really honored to have you here, Mark. It's really a pleasure. And so you can talk a little bit about your tradition and how you got into all of this.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just a normal designer. I've been designing for about 10 years, and then I had a big shift. I did martial arts when I was a young kid, and I always did it. And then I was living in Australia, and I needed to find a Tai Chi master, and I found one, and I started training with him. And he said, "Okay, we're going to do the internal stuff now." And after a year of that, I was changed. It changed. There was a shift, and there was an energy. Channels opened up, and my mind changed, and I became aware of many more things, and my entire world changed. I became a very different person, and I started to research many things. And after about 3 years, I discovered an entire new world that was available of ancient science and sacred science. And after studying dozens of different subjects, I realized that there was a way to be able to develop my design work and utilize sacred geometry and earth energies and work with the earth and work in a different way. So I was very passionate about being a designer, but I wanted to take it to another level. And so I found my teacher online, and I was in Australia, and then I came back to the UK, and then I started training with him. And so he is I guess the lineage holder of a 1,000-year-old lineage. It's the French tradition. So basically, it's the master builders, the master builders harmonic design. What that means is there was a tradition of builders going back to the Celtic peoples in Europe who built the stone circles, and they built the megalithic, the huge stone structures, and that tradition went through into France, and then around about 1,000 years ago, there's a lot of information started coming in from the east, from Persia, after the Crusades, and that was advanced building knowledge, like the arch, the Arabic arch, so there was a change in technology, a change in the ability to build really big structures, and so from temples and mosques, basically we basically had the ability to build cathedrals in Europe. But with that came an understanding of alchemy and higher level astronomy, a lot of information that had been lost in Western Europe. So essentially all the information from the Greeks handed down from Pythagoras, those traditions, was sort of stuck in Alexandria, and then there was the Dark Ages, and the information just stopped. The Catholic Church basically kept it and didn't allow it to come out.
Yeah.
But that information, there were lineages of masters, of builders and architects and designers and astronomers in the East, in Mesopotamia and Persia, and the information came out to Europe, and that was translated. And the input of that information created a renaissance of building in Europe, and that knowledge was then kept secretly within guilds of builders, and it was really known by very few people. And the master builders, as they were known, they were the architect, the surveyor, the designer, and the astronomer, and they would observe the movement of the sun and the moon, and then create designs, and then give those designs to the masons to build the huge structures that we now have in Europe. And then that tradition continued until about they stopped building around 1900, and then in the 1960s, the Grand Master of the tradition said, okay, we need to make this knowledge public. And then for the last 50 years, there's been a revival of the knowledge. New research has been done, and it's been taught publicly for the first time ever. And so that's the tradition that I've studied for 10 years, and it's an oral tradition. So basically, you learn and you draw by hand, and there's very specific technical methods to allow the information of the sun and the moon to be drawn down and connected with the energies of the earth. And so there's a lot of science, a lot of math and geometry, but then there's also the other side is feeling the earth energies, and that's the tradition.
Yeah, it's like bringing heaven to earth, basically. And for me, it's very interesting what you've said about activating your own energy by the Qigong and waking up, because we're going to also be talking about how to use these sacred sites and these spaces to actually do that. Because there's a connection between ourselves and these energy lines in our bodies, and how that affects our consciousness, our health, our well-being, and also how we use those points in the earth, which is, as we're going to be talking now, another living being. So how can you, because as an architect, also I have that training, I studied architecture. So one of the things that I love about having studied architecture is that it gives you like a massive cosmic vision of things. You know, you start thinking about different layers of the same object that you're analyzing, maybe a building, maybe the earth, maybe other objects that you want to think about. So it gives you a very deep interconnective reading of life. And I know you do this because of what you have been saying. It's just not just geometry, but also astrology, astronomy, and also the earth itself, the places, and also how that affects people. Because you've also said something very interesting, which is how this knowledge has been kept secret and now is coming out. And
Yes.
there are many knowledges that are coming out, that are being shared, because I think it's a time for that also, to be able to share. And that's one of the main motivations for doing this sort of interviews, to share this knowledge out, because we need to wake up. We need to be aware of how we can tune into all this knowledge, each one of us in a practical, grounded way. And so why don't you share a little bit of this overview that you may have about the earth as a living being and how it affects us, what's going on now, because we are all a little bit crazy, pandemics, things coming up, and we're a little bit like this, disconnecting mainly from the earth, ourselves and society. So how can we come together again to a more natural way of living and connecting?
Yeah, absolutely. The ancient worldview was that the earth was a living being, and also not just the earth, but all the planets. If you look at the most ancient texts from the Vedas forward, they recognize that each planet has an intelligence, has a spirit. So each planet is an actual spirit, and then at the earth level, all the ancient traditions believed that each mountain, each stream, each river had their own spirits in it. So what we today would call Mother Nature, that mother is actually the root of that is Ma, matrix. So it's basically it's a grid of mothers, not just one mother. So it's all these different spirits, and so there was the classical understanding was that of the elemental kingdom. So essentially we had. And if you go, you had the mineral kingdom, the rocks, the stones, the crystals. Then we had the plant kingdom and the trees, and then we have the animals and the birds, and then the humans. But there was another kingdom that was recognized. That's the elementals. And essentially, they were non-physical beings. They were the spirits of the different elements. And so there was the classical systems recognized the 5 elements: earth, air, fire, water, and ether, the 5th element. And all traditional worldviews understood these elements as being as the higher aspect. Now we have the periodic table of elements, the physical elements, but if you look at in the Vedic tradition, the 5 tattvas, or also in the Chinese tradition, and also in the Greek tradition, they all had this understanding of elements. And those elements, and also elementals, which are non-physical beings that relate to those elements. So the words can be a bit confusing sometimes. Yeah. But essentially, there was different layers of these. So you had archetypes of the elements, but then within the earth, there were different beings that were recognized as being related to those specific elements. So classically they recognized, for example, there were fire elementals. So that's the spirit of fire. And this background to the understanding of those elements basically allowed ancient peoples to recognize and work with those elementals. And so if you looked at, for example, different mythologies, and for each tradition, let's say we looked at a Native American tradition, and they might talk about the central spirit of a mountain, that actually would be recognized as being in other traditions as being a very powerful earth elemental that was then recognized as a deity, but essentially a higher spirit. And ancient cultures would then do ritual and do prayer and offerings to then allow them to connect to those higher spirits of their land. And so, for example, if you go to Bali today, is one very good example that those offerings are given 3 or 4 times a day. So that connection are an understanding that in the local area there are individual spirits that are alive and living to work with nature, established a direct connection between the humans in that space and all other beings of all different levels. Now, that recognition and that worldview has been mostly lost in the West. There are some places it still exists, like Iceland, for example, and Scandinavia. There are quite amazing stories of even recent times where a motorway was routed around a place where there were elementals, and the tradition is still very strong in Ireland. So that that understanding, with the loss of that understanding, has become a loss of our connection to the spiritual nature of the planet, and that the planet is a living being, and that we're all part of one family. And unfortunately, capitalism and the way that we live now is not focused upon that. It sees the earth as a resource to take from. And so essentially the ancient worldview is that we're taking from ourselves. And so this can then be seen at many levels in terms of the changes in the environment. Okay, we have climate, I mean, there's multiple layers here. We have climate change, but I think that's more to do with larger, the way I understand it, larger cycles,
Exactly.
as opposed to
human action,
human carbon footprints. Yeah, exactly. And I think there are other changes as well, which is, rather than just the cycles that's going on the planet, it's also the cycles in which our planet and our solar system are within the universe, the galaxy. So we go back to the Vedas, and the Vedic understanding of these cycles, of the different yugas and cycles, spans over hundreds and billions of years. They reckon they were able to see, they were physically able to see with their vision, and to be able to understand, thousands of years ago, the physical extent of the universe, but also to understand the energetic foundation of everything that existed, and also an understanding that everything was frequency. In India, in Sanskrit, it's called Nada Brahma. Basically, it means the world is sound, and Brahma, which was almost like the Hindu godhead, comes from that. And so there was a complete understanding at that level that everything came from frequency and everything came from consciousness. And the Indian tradition, which I'm sure you know about in terms of the yogas, and they understood at a very high level that nada, which means like the unstruck sound. So it's the sound that's never stopped. It's always been going on, and that sound is the expression of consciousness. And that sound, which when we intone the om sound, that's the nada expressing itself within us. So that worldview, that they recognize these huge cycles, and they recognize that everything came from vibration. And this was the foundation of all the ancient sciences, that basically that if we work with vibration, and we work constructively and co-creatively with those vibrations, and we work with the planet, we can achieve incredible things. That whole worldview was basically dumped in the West, and the whole foundations of an understanding that we are harmonic living beings vibrating within a huge family of infinite numbers of other vibrations, was not compatible specifically with the Catholic worldview, that there was one creator God and we were subservient, and we had to fall in line. The Catholic religious doctrine essentially removed the understanding of what actually spirit was. And then in the 17th century, after Descartes basically decided to instigate a new level of that, we've now entered the next 300 or 400 years of a new regime of dogma, which is science, which has also equally removed this vibration understanding of the universe from the awareness of general awareness, and it's a materialist viewpoint, which is that everything begins from the material, and then the consciousness and the vibratory is secondary. And that was never the world, that was never understood. Every ancient culture believed the opposite of that. And so this is one of our fundamental problems, is that worldview has been removed, and that we're now in a position that, you know, we've gone through exponential change in 100 years. You know, we're losing, you know, we're losing species by the day, and losing incredible amounts of ecosystem because of capitalism and the insane desire to own more things and to build more things, and we're taking resources from the earth and all of that, and it's not sustainable. Now, unfortunately, there is now another extreme view coming, which some people may have heard. It's called net zero, which basically started to say by 2030 we're going to start to cut down on many things, which on paper looks good, but the reality is that the reasons they believe those are for to do with or the carbon effects are not the real, and not actually the real things. It's more to do with the fact that we've lost our way, we've lost our connection to the earth and to those rhythms, and those rhythms can be the rhythms within the cycles of our life, our day to day, not recognizing the movements of the sun and the moon, not recognizing the planetary aspects, not recognizing we're part of a galactic universe, a galactic family where all of those aspects can contribute towards a meaningful life.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. I think we have, as humans, talent to cut things short and disaggregate them, and just analyzing small bits of it and thinking that that's the whole thing and the reality, when we're missing a lot of information just by doing that. And I think there's a time now to widen our perspective, our view, and to understand that we are part of a whole, and to integrate a lot of things, you know, integrate ourselves in a lot of things conceptually, because we are already integrated. That's the point. We are already part of that network, of that connection between the earth, planets, and everything. And when we tune into that connection, and when we are aware of it, life becomes more fluid, more easy, more healthy, more in balance, because we're just what it is. It's what it is. And instead, when we work from that other perspective of analyzing, isolating, and cutting off a lot of information to just reduce it so that we can understand it with our minds, it's not really working. And I think this is the change we're going through now. There's this proposal of society to actually isolate each time more, reduce, cut, and control more with a kind of intellectual mindset. And there is the biology of things that has another proposal. And in this channel, we want to precisely open this view to all of these changes that are happening. And as you're saying, analyzing the climate change issue isolated from huge cycles that we have gone through during a lot of thousands of years, it's kind of self-centered and naive, and I think it's not helping really. And I think it serves some other hidden agendas and some other interest. And so we have to learn how to distinguish, how to feel what's right or wrong for us. And so this is why these practices that are actually allowing us to tune into that reality, our biology, and how it has an impact, how things have an impact in our bodies. How can we feel it instead of how can we analyze it and think about it? And what I love about this talk, for example, is that we are joining both things. We are getting a perspective that is giving information to actually enter and feel and connect in a different way with all these, as you were saying, elementals. But I think it's understanding that frequency and sound and the non-material is the origin of everything. And It's changing the paradigm from coming from the outside towards the inside, which is what we have been trained to do. You know, the things are physically, and reality is physical, and the material stuff, instead of knowing that it's vibration, and that is creating, and that is having an effect on the material manifestation of that. So thank you for sharing that point of view. And maybe we can talk about this interaction with the environment, with the energetic aspects of the environment, these maybe the places, maybe the elementals, and how can we connect more with them in this moment of changes in life? No, how can we actually use this information? What can we do to connect with these energies?
Yeah, well, I think there's many things we can do. I think there's if I start with design, there's actually there's been 40 years of research. It's called biophilia, or biophilic research. Biophilia means like nature loving, but essentially there's been a lot of science to recognize that just by being in nature, not by doing anything, just being in it, we get more healthy. And in many different ways. There's a wonderful example of this. It's called Shinjin-roku, which is in Japan, which means forest bathing. And in 1982, the Japanese government started investing in this, and they reckon, and there are now 62 sites in Japan of forest bathing. And this is essentially, there are places where people just go and absorb all of the amazing benefits of being in nature from the trees. And the the research discovered that the trees give off like these aromas, these microscopic hydrogen-based aromas called terpenes, and they just improve our health, reduce stress. They're able to actually work on the physical level, actually work to improve our natural killer cells. And so nature's actually, actually healing. Is if we're going to spend a week or 2 weeks in the forest, we're going to come away with months and months of improvement. So that one level, that really at the physical level, just by spending time in nature is absolutely vital. And there are many people recognizing that now. So that's sort of at the physical level. The ancient traditions knew this, but they also recognized that there were other flows and other energies that existed, and they were able to recognize them. Because they didn't have Wi-Fi and they were living close to the earth, they were able to live in resonance with the earth. And this was the foundation of an energetic science which is at least 4,000 years old, where building with stones in the landscape and on specific places of crossings of earth energies. And that's essentially, is very briefly, that's energetic fields that are caused by different physical conditions. So whether there are crossings of underground water streams, whether there are faults in the earth, but also non-physical aspects as well. They're actually the energy currents, the ley lines and dragon lines, which is too big for us to go into the complete system today. There are many different frequencies and many different aspects of those. But in the last 40, 50 years, there's been a lot of research done to understand what those are, and that there are some of them are electromagnetic, and some of them are made or they originate from sound frequencies deep in the center of the earth, and even some of them, those frequencies being transduced from the sun and other aspects of the universe. So we have many different frequencies that the ancient peoples recognized and are still with, wherever our listeners are, those energies are in their house right now, where they're sat, and they're just coming from the earth. And that understanding is now really vital, because those energies are not necessarily good or bad; they just exist, and it depends on where we are and how we're using it. For example, a powerful crossing of underground water will create across that comes up from the land. And that's great if we want to build a temple, but it's really bad if our bed's on top of it.
Exactly.
So yeah, so it's yeah, so it's very, very, it's the levels of intensity. More importantly now, in the last 100 years, we've been grounding electricity into the earth, which has amplified some of those fields at a global scale, but also means that if we're sleeping in a bedroom, we have one of these crossings, and then we have a lot of underground water, and we have electricity, and we know electricity and water don't mix. We're just creating more really powerful negative charge fields that really don't support life. So so we have those aspects, and now we're moving into a new era where a 5th generation 5G frequencies transmitters are turning on, which really are a disaster for the environment. They're a disaster for plant life, disaster for bees, and a disaster for the earth, and also for human health. What's happening is that we're living all these things. So what do? Well, we have to protect ourselves. We also have to recognize how we can use the earth. So maybe we'll just talk about how we can work with those good frequencies first. One of those frequencies, or it's not really a frequency, but it can almost feel like that, is negative ions, which when we go to the beach or when we go to a waterfall, we're recognizing these ions with an additional charge. So a charge, negative ion charge, has an extra electron, and then positive one also has a proton. Then it's actually the reverse. We don't want positive, we want negative. We want negative charge. And so that's why we go to the beach, we feel amazing because there's always negative charge, or if we go in the ocean or we go to a waterfall. Now that's great. And so essentially, yeah, and you have there's one, there's one in the background, the negative ion generator. So essentially, when we go into nature, we have that. So that's why we go to if we go to forest, or there's a waterfall, we're getting terpenes. The trees are healing us, the waterfall's healing us, the sunlight's there, and we're feeling amazing. So that's pretty much the baseline. Get into nature, and then get outdoors, and start to feel, and we're just going to feel good. That's one level. We don't need to do anything. We just need to go there.
Yeah.
I guess the next thing then is start. The next thing. Oh, yep. We're going to say something.
Yeah, I was just thinking about all these things that people, maybe some of you who are listening to this talk, maybe thinking is like, I don't feel any of it, because I was like that. I was very skeptical, but it's as easy as you are saying. Just it makes you feel good. It relaxes you. It's like when you go up to, hiking, and you go to the mountain, and then you come back and you feel lightheaded, your body's relaxed, you're tired, but it's not just tiredness. It's also a relaxation, kind of letting go of stress, like doing breath work or any other thing that it really makes you feel good. It's like it brings the stress down and makes you like return to your senses, let's say, something like that. And it's a very subtle thing, as you're saying. So we have to train ourselves also to perceive those subtleties. And also because you have spoken about the water and how it influences us in our sleep. Lately, I've known a case, someone who was sleeping just on top of one of those underwater currents, and this person has been having trouble to sleep, actually. So on top of having issues and psychology things, etc., that I as a therapist know about, also this subtle things in a house are so important. And I remember when I started shifting from architecture to psychology and the architecture of our psyche, there was a point in between which was called the habitat medicine, which was learning how to heal people by healing the space in which we live. And it's so important. We just don't realize. But if you're for example, sitting down the whole day on top of one of those crossings, your body is being messed up and you don't realize. But as you say, if you sit there to actually do a work, or if you sit on top of a current to let go of things, and underwater flow of things, and you're just using that energy, it's going to be useful, but you don't want to sleep there. So I think it's really important what you've said. Yeah. And to tune into those subtleties. So I think it's not a strange thing, it's not something foreign, it's not something alien that we're talking about here. It's very simple, very subtle, and very a daily life thing. We do it all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I think there's another level to that can then be our environment. If we're working in an office and we have huge amounts of Wi-Fi and electromagnetic fields, getting outside, you know, for lunchtime is really important. Go and find a tree. So many ancient traditions recognized the importance of the power that trees have, for example, and be able to balance us. The Taoist tradition has an entire practice. It's called Ping Heng Gong. Basically, it's a balancing practice, and they work with trees so that to be able to connect the body's energy field with those of trees, and that's quite an advanced practice. But essentially, just sitting down by a tree, your back to the tree, and then becoming quiet and having some, and then going inwardly, and then starting to feel the vibration of that tree. You can actually, it's such a huge being, it's such a strong, powerful field. You can then start to then allow yourself to relax into that field, and actually, and then there can be if you then give a recognition of that tree, and actually and ask for help and give gratitude for that field. Well, that you can use that field. You know, if you've had a really stressful day, just use that tree to drop some of those frequencies that are negative to your field, and drop them back into the earth, and that those trees will assist you in doing that. So that's you know, you don't have to hug the tree. You can just you can just feel it in that field. Yeah, exactly. And so the energy field of that tree has layers in the same way that the auric field of human, you know, we also have those layers. So we can interact. So the key with all of those things is resonance. Resonance means that basically two oscillating systems, two systems that are moving like this, can come into resonance and then become one system. So if we can do that, so we can come into resonance with a tree, then that principle is how then we work, how the ancient traditions worked in designing spaces. How do we then build a space that's in resonance with its environment? So we'll come back to that you know, a bit later in the talk. Yeah. So I think when we're continuing to think about the environment, I mean, one of the best things you could do is go camp, you know, for a holiday, go camping, get outside, sleep on the ground, be outdoors the whole time, go hiking, go swimming in rivers, swim in the ocean, walk barefoot, sleep outdoors. A week of that will reset your circadian rhythms. Reset you to the natural rhythms of the planet. So, and watch the stars and the moon. So these are the things that we are blocked from in normal life. And then one of those things then is we come, is being barefoot. We're not, we're very rarely unless we're living in the Mediterranean and we're outdoors a lot. In Northern Europe, an awful lot. We're indoors. It's cold, or outdoors. We're wearing shoes, and with trainers, and most are rubber soles. It becomes an insulator. So those shoes are insulating us from the natural frequency of the earth. So we can maybe talk about that now. So the earth as a system has atmospheric charge. So there's the planet, which is negatively charged. Then we have the atmosphere, and it's electricity constantly storms are constantly charging the atmosphere with electricity, which then comes down into the earth, and then this charge field is necessary for life. But also, we have a charged atmosphere, which is one of the reasons why we talked about negative ions before. Electricity will charge up the atmosphere. So just before a storm, we have a rainstorm here in Spain at the moment. Just before that happens, you're going to get more charge, more electricity, and so we are electric beings. So if there's a storm brewing, get outside. Don't be hit by lightning, but go out there and allow your field to be charged up with negative ions. When there isn't storms, then we also want to be understanding that there is that charge available to us from the earth, and taking our shoes off, taking the rubber off, or choosing non-rubber soled shoes, or you can get those barefoot sandals and trainers, or you can even get little spikes you can put into your shoes to almost to create grounding. So there's in footwear that's really important. On your lunch break, if you haven't got a tree, lie on the grass, literally connect to the earth. And then as much as possible, walk barefoot on sand or on grass, or on grass is actually better than earth, because actually every blade of grass acts as a you get tens of thousands of little attractors of charge. So that's really important. When we're sleeping, when we're working, what are very popular now are earthing mats, and they can be very good. You do have to be careful though, and this is when we can maybe talk about this in another call, because it's quite a big subject. Is that actually you can then earth in the same way that a plug will has an earth. We can then have these, so they can be beneficial. So allowing us to connect back to that charge. So there is that aspect. And then I think then the other thing we can maybe then just go back to is the energies. We briefly talked about before, these energy flows in the landscape and everywhere around us. How do we work with those? Well, they are everywhere, and you can find them with dowsing rods, which is an L-shaped rod, and it's very easy to learn how to teach people to do that. Some people can do that naturally. A lot of people will almost have that skill without knowing that we just get we arrive in a new place, and when we come to a natural place, and it doesn't feel good, and we don't take it. Or if we're going to buy a house, we just say this doesn't feel good, and exactly. A lot of people only employ that skill when maybe it's really important. It's like
good vibes or bad vibes, and that's it.
Yeah. So a really easy way to recognize maybe one of the good places, if you're in nature, is if there's a circle of trees, always in the center point of that circle, you can have a really great point. That circle will attract energy lines. So that's really good. And of course, then there are particular formations of nature which attract good energy points, and this was the foundation then of sacred building, and that could be things like caves. So basically, a cavity will attract lines. That like a mountain peak, a mound, a semicircular mound shape. All these structures will attract earth energy lines, and so that's why we have places like Glastonbury Tor, which is man-made and replicates a circular mountain, or the ancient burial mounds, which are it's going to be semicircular, like Newgrange. These structures, which and they have so that's basically a semicircular mound with a cavity in it. So you've got two structures there, and if you then basically put a standing stone on the top like an antenna, you've then got three different subtle energy attractors, and so this then became the foundation of sacred architecture. And something called a dolmen. Maybe some people who's on the call will know what they are. That's two vertical sheets, and then one on the top, and essentially that's a table. It's a table, and that becomes an attractor. So when then it will then bounce energies back down. It's an artificial cave because they recognize that, so they build those. So those conditions in the landscape will attract those energies, and then over time, those places will attract much more energies and more power, and then essentially what would happen is that there would be civilization will develop, and then they will develop architecture, and they will then start to design structures that are in resonance with the vibrations we were talking about before, which are musical, which were usually musical frequencies. They recognized that the universe was made of music, that God was actually music itself, and they would then build with harmonies, and then build with those vibrations. And so ancient temples and ancient structures were literally music encapsulated in art, in architecture, and all those sculptures and the art replicated that. So it was the Greeks who took understanding to a new level. They took the mathematics of Pythagoras, and then the harmonic scale, and then started to recognize those proportions. For example, the most famous one is the golden ratio, those ratios, and how those ratios of music then exist in all parts of nature. And then once you have that understanding, and then you know where your power place is, you can then build a very powerful resonant structure made of music, and then you can go there and have an amazing experience, and then have a greater level of connection. So essentially, we can go into nature where there's a circle of trees, and then we can connect to the earth energies, or we can go to the sacred site where essentially astronomical and building sciences took that understanding to a new level to build structures which amplify those frequencies, and then made very special structures that were aligned to the movements of the planets and on specific days of the year. So and the times of the year were recognized: the solstices, when the high and low points of the year; the equinox, when the middle point of the year; and particular days were recognized in the cycle of the year. So that there was an understanding of space and time, so that you understood how the formation of structures with sound, and how that can, and when you build with those proportions and those dimensions, you're actually literally bringing heaven down to earth.
Exactly.
And then we understand when you utilize those spaces on the right time, you have space, you have structures to do space and time. So the word temple comes from the Latin meaning time. It's we get temporal in English from that. So it's a structure that allows us to connect to time and those cycles. We talked that earlier on. So when you understand those cycles, when you understand the frequencies of the frequencies that determine all organic life and the movement, or the movement of energy, and the movement of energy as sound and light, and then you know where your power place is, you can then plug your frequency structure into the earth, and then have a place that can allow you to connect to your chosen God, to the planets, to the stars. You can then use it to enhance fertility in your seeds. There's amazing research done in the 1990s where two researchers placed seeds on top of flat pyramids in Mexico and Peru, and they recognized that the very strong magnetic anomalies in the land that were then creating incredible seed growth in seed germination. So it's for fertility. Some temples were for human fertility, for procreation, and also for birthing temples, utilizing natural pools with earth energy vortexes. There's, where I'm in Spain, there's one, found one in a place about an hour east of Granada. There's one I've seen it in Ireland, in a place called Drumbeg, where there is a stone circle and there's a pool, and there's particular frequencies where those frequencies are able to activate the lower chakras in the body. So it was a place where the ancient Celtic people would go to for fertility and for birthing. So and also death as well. These the places where we recognise that the soul can exit in a very coherent way. So if you can live in a coherent way, which means that you can live in a very connected, efficient way with the frequencies of the planet, that's fine. But also we want to be born in a really beautiful resonant structure, not a hospital, because it's full of Wi-Fi and electricity and concrete and mobile phones. So if you're going to have a child, don't have them born in a hospital. Do it at home and in a protected Wi-Fi space with lots of love. And also, if you're going to die, don't do it in a hospital. That's really bad, because essentially our spirit, our spirit is a charge field of plasma. And this is we're not going to get into the physics of it, but we want our charge, which and our consciousness, to exit the body in a really nice environment. And doing that with horrendous drugs and really horrendous frequencies is not the way for our soul to leave the physical body. So all of these things, all these different aspects of how to be born well, how to live well, and how to die well, we're all recognized, and we can do that resonantly. What we now have, I think what you touched on earlier as well is really interesting about the changes that are happening. I think that we're living through really extreme times, very challenging, but it's also a golden age as well, because from the last 40, 50 years, we have all these ancient sciences of research has been done. As you recognized, all the ancient traditions are allowing their knowledge to come out. I'm reading a book at the moment about the Mayan tradition, how they publicly talked about their astronomical expertise, which is unrivaled by any tradition in the world.
The knowledge of time.
Only 20 years ago, and they have not spoken publicly for 300 years. And all these traditions are now providing all of their sciences for us. And I think that we now have an opportunity to be able to use those. And I think that if we're going to talk on a more global scale, one of the other challenges that we're facing is the geoengineering, which is the weather modification, which is a disaster, probably the largest health disaster that we're facing on Earth right now. It's nothing to do with anything that's happened in the last 2 years. It's literally how governments are choosing to try and modify the Earth. And I think that even though that seems like a huge thing, and it's how do we affect that? How do we protect ourselves from that? I think that it's at a local level, there are things that can be done where we can start to recognize what's happening. We can help the environment and the plants and the bees by helping to stop these frequencies that are non-natural, coming in. I think there needs to be an awful lot of more recognition that we just not that at a local scale, that the local governments can't just implement these frequencies because they have no idea what they're doing. And the Earth. And I think that we're in a position now that the last 2 years has mobilized and awoken, as you talked about people coming awake, has then forced a lot of people to really recognize what's going on. And unfortunately, there's a huge amount of pressure being applied by the military-industrial complex, the global pharma, big pharma, and big tech, who really don't care about the planet. And I think that there are now people realizing that we can and have to do things now. And I think that there's the understanding the nature of the Earth and understanding that we're part of this living system is probably one of the best things we can do, and to get outside and connect with the Earth and connect with these frequencies and recognize that the Earth is a living being. So in terms of sacred sites, there's a fantastic initiative of sacred sites a connection that's begun in the UK here by one of my teachers called Rory Duff, who you know.
Yeah.
And this is based on his groundbreaking work, looking at some of the largest earth energy lines on the earth. He's called Emperor Dragons. He's recognized that in certain times of the year, in certain places, we come back to space and time. So this is a modern take on going to sacred spaces. They're not necessarily where there are temples, but they're actually where there are crossings of some of the largest earth energy lines. If we go there on the right times, which is on the solstices and equinoxes, those lines stop moving, and they allow us then to connect into the earth and now to really, really connect in a very, very powerful way. And there are now groups happening all over the UK and all over the world where people are coming together to connect with those earth energies and utilizing vibration and intention and sound to be able to create vibratory charge fields that are incredibly powerful and not only can help to bring vibratory balance and harmony to the land, but also to ourselves. And it's incredibly powerful to do that in groups. And every culture in the world has known that for millennia. Now we have a new way of doing it. So I know that you take people to sacred sites around the world, and so going to those ancient places where those places were built, those resonant structures are built that we talked about before. But now people have an opportunity to go and find those. And even if people can't get to Machu Picchu, they can still go in the land. These vortexes are everywhere in the landscape. Even where everyone is sat now, there will be 2 or 3 little vortex points that can open the heart chakra, and they can be found, and they can be used. And so maybe that's something we can talk about at the end, which is that I teach people how to find those, and
Exactly.
I'll be creating a little online course just to teach people simply how to use a dowsing rod to be able to find a really nice place that's going to open the heart. And then maybe if they need to move the bed so they can sleep a little bit better. They're just those 2 things that we can wake up feeling better, but also if we can then start to recognize a vibration that's going to resonate with our heart chakra, that we can recognize it's coming from the earth. And if everyone started to do that, and we can build we can find one of those in every office and workplace in the country. We can go and sit on those, and then there could be a recognition that the earth is there to help us, and not rather than just a resource.
Yeah, I would like to talk about the building that you've done in Earthlight. Earthlight is a project of a different layer project, because it's not just a farm, it's not just a teaching about energies, it's not just about producing natural plant-based medicine. It's a huge project that I really like. And when I went to visit it, you were doing a sort of a kind of workshop talk on one of those stone circles that you have built. And it was really amazing to find out and to experience in the body certain points that you actually feel in certain parts of the body. We call it chakras, but you can feel certain parts of your body activating, moving, and you can feel there's a shift in it. There's more energy directed specifically to those areas when you stand in certain points of the circle. And that for maybe some people may sound like a very strange thing, but as you are saying, the basis, the origins of architecture is first to protect fire, second to establish life in a place that was naturally for life, that it was helping them to improve life, to live better. And then they use these sites, these caves, these mountains, these tree circles to actually activate certain parts of themselves. And they use this in ceremonies and for burials, for giving birth. As you're saying, there are certain parts, certain places in nature that have always been connected to those specific points. And it's not something mystical, it's something physical. mystical physical, let's say. It's you can feel it in your body. And when you feel it in the body, you can realize, by contrast, how are you feeling in your daily base, your daily activities. Yeah? So if you feel suddenly that the stomach relaxes, you can realize how stressed you are, how worried you are, you know. Or if you suddenly feel that your heart chakra relaxes and opens, you can realize how close, how disconnected you're feeling from everything. So it's more difficult to have empathy. It's more difficult to understand one another in your daily relationships. So it's actually something that is you're feeling, and it's affecting your digestion, your relationships, the way you work, your money, how you serve in this life, how you're paid for that service. So it's really, really a life changing experience to go to these sites. And as you're saying, there are very easy ways to connect. We'll probably talk more about these workshops that we're going to be doing. And one thing that I really love is bringing people to those sites to experience them, to have that experience, not just to think about it, but to see how it works. And there are people that have been to these trips that have had amazing life changes. Changes like suddenly getting married after years of not having a relationship, finding someone because you're more open, because you're really making a shift in your consciousness. And there are things that happen in these places, as you're saying. And for me, it's amazing to realize that you don't have to go to Peru, or you don't have to go here to Glastonbury. You can find places around. You can even do it in your garden if you build one of those sites. Because one of the amazing things that I find about your work is that you can build these sites where there's already an energy point and enhance that, and build one of those power points to really feel better, to make your house healthier, to grow plants for any purpose. So it's not just something that is there in nature, it's something that we can work with, we can connect with, we can recreate and enhance and use it. So tell us about your work, and how do you work with this? What things do you do apart from this stone circles? Because I know you do a lot of things, interior design, you build. So tell us a little bit about how you work with this.
Okay, so I work with frequencies, sound frequencies, and I design and build, and I can apply that to architecture, into interiors, furniture, to landscapes, and to individual places like circles. And essentially, the principle is that we can bring balance to a space by bringing those harmonies into the space, and as you said, live within those great harmonies. So there's a process of harmonization, which is recognizing, finding out where the good places are and the bad places are. If it's very bad, we can then fix them with acupuncture on the land, in the same way you acupuncture on the body. And so we bring the land back into balance, and then we can then bring the space back into balance. And that's the first thing. Then after that, then we can then apply different means. So we have a garden, we can build a structure. So the Earthlight project, which is an amazing community space which you've been to, which has a herbal apothecary garden. Over the summer we built in a workshop a 16-meter medicine wheel, and that has 4 sections. So it's a traditional wheel, looks like a cross. It's a solar cross based on the Native American tradition, and that wheel includes some of the herbs from the Earthlight herbs there from the different elements, because the herbs are grown medicinal herbs, and so it becomes a very powerful place for community, for ritual, for group activities, for outdoor sound baths. But also for the plants that are growing within that harmonized structure. So the plants are going to grow better with those frequencies, and it's going to bring harmony to the land. Earthlight is actually very very exciting, as you said, because the idea is that it's going to develop into a health hub, which allows people to come and to get understanding of the multidimensional nature of healing. That there are all the different aspects of nature that can provide healing and balancing for us. So green prescribing, which is essentially going in, basically being prescribed nature before medicines, and also working with holistic therapies and allowing groups and education and people to come and see firsthand the herbs, but also recognize and feel that those earth energies are there. Now, we don't need to build a 60-meter, as you said, a huge medicine wheel. We can build smaller ones. And so when I work with, I can build smaller structures in internal spaces. We can do it with plants, and so basically you can just be plants set out with the geometry of sound. I work with grids. Some people might be aware of crystal grids, but I work with big stones or other ways to build grids around houses that exist, and that grid then basically grounds some of the harmonies and frequencies of the sun and the music of the land around the building. If I'm working with a new building, I can then design those frequencies into the structure, working with other architects. So essentially the building is alive and has been designed with those musical frequencies. I'm working on a project in Spain at the moment for a Sufi client, where we have a site in town where we're designing a garden space, and there's healing spaces and yoga deck and lots of healing herbs. And right now we're designing utilizing the golden ratio for the actual curves in the spaces, so we can actually work with those natural forms. And then I'll add another layer where I'll bring in these very special harmonic frequencies into the structure. So I can work at multiple levels. So that's essentially that's designing new places, harmonizing, making things in imbalance, bringing the space into balance so that we can live, as you said very well, so we can come into more alignment with our energy system, alignment with ourselves, alignment with our purpose, and also then we can become, well, in our environment is really connected and resonant with the earth. We can then be more successful. Our businesses can be more successful, or more abundant.
Exactly.
And then there's building work, which we've talked about the Earthlight and medicine wheel, but they can be smaller structures as well. They can be plant mandalas, labyrinths. I also build an individual structure that allows people to stand within the energies of their birth, and it's very, very powerful. And then the other aspects of my work is teaching. So teaching people to learn how to feel earth energies, how to recognize what they are, how to understand how earth energies can negatively affect us, called geopathic stress, which is also related then to electromagnetic stress, which is how, we talked about how all these new frequencies are really, really very bad for us. And also teaching people to find these really wonderful places in nature, how to connect. I'll be teaching some new courses next year on combination of sacred geometry and energy, and I'll be starting, I think next year for the first time, starting to teach some of the design aspects of my traditions. Basically, some of the key ways that we actually can start to design. So some people may be interested in to learn further. I think I have a workshop in the spring working with garden design, how we can then bring geometries into gardens to improve crop growth. There's some other aspects of that which we'll bring in, which is to do with stones and radionics and some other frequency-based knowledge that has been rediscovered in the last 30, 40 years. We will talk about maybe something called Agnihotra, which is the Vedic fire ceremony that's used if you do a If you have a little fire ceremony, you make a fire at sunrise and sunset, and you do a little offerings, it creates a magnetic charge field, and the plants and everything just grows incredibly well. Yeah, so lots of teaching next year, and then I think we talked about Earth Light and how your groups can come together. So this more I want to be doing as well is bringing groups to sites, but also then teaching them how to feel. And I think this is really important. There's an awful lot of tourism, there's a lot of tourism. People tend to visit sites and just take photos and then leave. We want people to be going there,
Exactly.
connecting with the energies, connecting with the frequencies and some of the storehouses knowledge that can be found in those structures, and then allowing those places of high vibration, of high resonance, to actually really impact our lives, and to allow us to recognize what we said right at the start of the call, that the earth is a living being, and we're part of that living family.
Exactly. Yeah, one of the things that I love doing, bringing people to these sites, like here in Glastonbury or in Peru in the Sacred Valley or the Titicaca Lake, or going to the pyramids in Bosnia and in Medjugorje. There's so many, and to Mexico, to Hawaii, to other places that we're traveling, is actually that what those places, they can really have an impact, and they have it, whether you realize it or not. But when you realize it and you use it, then you enhance that. And one of the things that I love to do, and that we will be talking about, that is creating these trips here to Glastonbury. And now that Earth Light is very close by, and you will be staying for longer here in England, we might do some of those works together to teach people how to use better those sacred sites. Because as you're saying, tourism is not just something you do to spend money and time that is useless. You can actually go to places and transform your life and use those places to heal. Like when you go to the pyramids in Bosnia, as you were saying, the negative ions, the Bovis energy that is there that they're measuring. Those pyramids, when you enter, it's actually a healing place, because there are no radiation, or the radiation that there is the earth one, which is actually healing. It's full of negative ions. The water there is charged. So really going to those places, those healing places, it's an amazing thing to do with your time and your money, because really now it's a time to be responsible for our own health and our own lives. If we are waiting, as we were saying, there are many proposals that this society is doing, that we have to choose if we tune into that or not. We have to choose if it's right for us or not. And we have to be responsible of our own health and of our own well-being. And how to do that when we're overwhelmed by information, by impacts, by, social opinions, media, just feeling what is good for you, what is not, and returning to nature and going to these places to actually connect and see what makes you feel better. And I think this way of traveling, this way of going to sites, this way of connecting with nature, this way of using well your house, because we use a car, we use a tool, we even use a mobile phone, we read the instructions, but we don't know how to use a house. And that is crazy, because we live there. And where to sit down, where to lay down, where to cook, and how to use a house where you're spending most of your time, or an office where you're spending most of your time.
Yeah, this is a large part of my work going forward, is to get people in business to recognize that environments are not benign. They can be very powerfully impactful. It's called sick building syndrome has been recognized.
Exactly.
But there are many more things occurring that's going to make those places even more sick, and one of those is 5G. And some people may be aware of the dangers, but there is, there's new research being shown that the towers are actually creating new grids. So, grids in the earth. So there are many types of grids which we can talk about, next time, and how all the different frequencies. But the earth creates natural network grids like this, rectangular grids, and the towers are creating new ones, and they're very, very bad, really big, very powerful. And what happens is these lines are going to cross over and then come up into buildings, and then fill them up with even more powerful energies. I know that in cities now there are 5G emitters on top of lampposts, and some of these are in residential streets, and these emitters can be very close to bedrooms. And so I think it's really important that people start to protect themselves, but also recognizing that their homes are going to become under more attack by these frequencies. So I think thankfully now there are now, in the last year or so, I'm now starting to see devices that can protect. Some of them didn't work so well. There are more that are. I'm testing one set of devices at the moment which seem to be working very well, not only for our spaces, but also for personal protection as well, because these frequencies are everywhere. And I think that's really important. I think that we talked about how can we go into nature, how can we recognize nature, and I think how can we use the planet. We talked about many things, the right time of day, sunrise and sunset. There's an important one here that I've got to say, at sunrise and sunset you have a particular frequency of light that's very beneficial to the energy body, and then at day and midday it's the opposite to that. So the time of day, time of the month, the full moons, the equinoxes, in terms of time, how can we really benefit? But also we also need to protect ourselves as well. You've got a negative ion generator there. So negative ion generators are useful. Human frequency generators can be beneficial as well. And the other things like not living in houses where there's air conditioning, because that creates more positive ions or negative ions. Opening windows and the fresh air, and all those these simple things. And then I think the other thing as well is, in terms of protecting ourselves, we can buy devices, but what's really important is now going forward is we need to be cleansing. We need to be drinking a lot of the highest quality water we can get, and if it's not high quality, then make it high quality. Vortex it, add frequencies to it, and get all the chemicals out. Don't eat organic, local, and in season. Don't eat genetic modified food. Heavy metal cleansing. The heavy metals we need to get the heavy metals out of the body. We don't want aluminium in the body. And we want to removing all that toxic load, because there's one of the things is there's these frequencies that are occurring now. There's a whole lot of research being looked at now, that where our solar system is in the galaxy is that we're coming to an area of very high charged gamma radiation, and then there can be positive and negative benefits to that. But essentially, if we are full of toxins and chemicals and sugar and glyphosate and all these things, then our body's not going to be open to be able to take on these good frequencies. So I think that keeping ourselves as clean as possible and protecting ourselves, and then taking on things like fulvic acids, internally, and really high powerful cleansing, natural cleansing elements into the body, that's going to support us in a really, really great way. Great sunlight, really good water, really, really grounding and making the body alkaline. So when we go into nature, we can take advantage of all those great frequencies.
Yeah, I think that as a summary of our talk today, which is the title, I think it's connecting with the vitalizing rhythms of Earth. I think it's just to realize that we are electric electric beings, frequency beings, and that we have to know how to plug and unplug, and where are we plugging or unplugging ourselves, and what kind of energy fields, what kind of things are we allowing in, and how can we choose that? How can we use that? Realizing that we have this ability, that frequencies are making us healthy or unhealthy, that we are mainly water, that we are in tune with these planets that have an impact. The sun, the moon, the stars, they all create energy fields that have impacts on us. The nature creates energy fields and moves through energy, vibrations, and fields. And so where do we go to nurture ourselves, and where do we go to actually not nurture ourselves? So I think this is mainly the point of this talk, to realize that Earth is a living being, that we're part of it, that we're connected to it, whether we like it or not, that we can use that connection to heal ourselves. We can use that connection and enhance that connection and use it consciously, how to use it, and how that has an impact in our health, in our relationships, in our the way we live. And also, which I find amazing, is this connection between space and the emotional state. That for me was mind-blowing when I realized how spaces, creating different spaces with different geometries, different lights, and different materials would affect the health and the emotional state of the beings, the human and animal beings that were inside, and plants. That's why I started learning how to heal spaces, like habitat medicine. And then I went into the mind health, which was like how to work with people, because by that time I didn't realize that we could do this that you're doing, which is create harmonious and balanced architecture that bring this power grid to our health, or to our lives. So I'm really grateful for this chat. I think we have a lot more of topics to talk about. I think we could, as we were saying, made another program on the ley lines, the nodes, and how to test them, feel them, what impact they have and they don't. We could have another one on how to use this architecture and this building and these nodes and this space in our houses. And I also know that you and Tiffany is is connected with Earth Light, and she's actually the one that is moving forward this project with all her passion. She's really a passionate girl. So I felt very connected to her story. And I know you're having more projects, so we'll probably go on to more talks for next year, and it would be great to have you back here in Metamorphosis and El Vuelo del Águila. So I don't know if you want to say something where people can connect with you, your website, and I know you're launching.
Yeah, so I think that if people want to see what I do, I have a website, and that is markleib.com, MarkLeib.com, and there's an overview of my work there, and my email is mark@markleib.com. We can probably give this out, and then we can give also the link to the Earthlight site as well. People can have a look at that. I think it's very important, because there's going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot of need for this. Other sites like this, and there's other projects we have which we could talk about next year. We have another site in Somerset, which I think is just been given the green light, where we can work with families and energies, and plants as well. And we can also give people a link to Rory's Sacred Site Project, which is I think it's really important. That's really important.
Sacred Network. Yeah.
Sacred Network. That's it. Sacrednetwork.com probably. Yeah, I think that's a really wonderful place for people to start to go and connect. When there's a lot of people there, there's going to be a very strong field, and then we can then in the next in our next call we can talk a bit more, and then probably in the new year we can start to give some people some dates, because I'll be running workshops in the spring into summer. People want to come and learn and feel the energies, and we can do that, and then I'll be doing some more teaching, and as I think I mentioned earlier, I'll be creating an online course as well, so people can then start to learn those skills and start to create sort of these spaces, in their homes, in their workplaces, and start to raise their awareness of vibration, and also raise the vibrational. And I think maybe you said something really, really interesting about sort of our general vibrational health. I think there's another aspect is also is the information we choose as well. Exactly. Is that there's so much negative information, and there's so much so much frequency has been weaponized over the the last number of years, and it's going to only increase. And people have to be, I know that I'm sure your listeners are very aware of this, but there's going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot more coming, and I think these actually calling them weapons is not wrong. There's frequencies is going to be utilized, and it's going to be important to be able to protect ourselves and know in advance so that we can live.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is it's really important how to focus our attention and our intention into things that are nurturing for us, things that are actually bringing us high vibrations, bringing us. Oh, you're back. I was just saying that choosing what enhances our energy. And learning how to focus our attention and intention, which information we have, what food we eat, where we stay, where we go. I think the best thing I've ever done was years ago turn off the TV. So start feeding myself with information that I really feel that is nurturing and that is building myself up, and realizing that all the things that I said are not necessarily information, they're misinformation. There's a lot of things going on.
And programming.
Sorry? Programming, absolutely. So choose wisely. If you don't know how to choose wisely, contact us, and so we can have a talk with the therapists that we do. If you want to learn about the sites and the sacred sites and go to these places to actually do a very powerful, deep process with inner work, with shamanism, with healing, with precisely deprogramming the beliefs and these thoughts are being fired against us, let's say, or to us. So we're doing these amazing trips. We have one in January to Peru, which has a few spaces still open. We'll be doing some more in May and October, the end of October, here to Glastonbury, to Avalon, to connect with the tour that you have been talking about and the Ley Lines here. We'll probably be doing more trips here to Glastonbury to connect with this grid, with these power places, sauna and chamber, etc. Knowing how to connect with the land, with these power sites, and also knowing that you are around here doing workshops, maybe connecting and bringing people to Earthlight, so that we can create a network for you viewers to actually have tools to have things that you can use on your daily basis, but also that enable you to be healthy, to feel better, to know how to deal with basic things of life, like eating, relating, thinking, and using a house and using nature. So things that should be taught in schools. So I think it's time to re-educate ourselves and choose wisely. So thank you, Mark, for being with us today. Of course, in the description of this video, you will have all his data to connect, all those links, the link to the Sacred Network of Rory Duff and his work, which is amazing, the Earthlight Project, and of course, Mark's website and his projects. And also you will find information about our trips and the work we do with family constellations, with therapy sessions, and with workshops. We have a workshop called Awaken, Wake Up, Despierta in Spanish. So we work with people that talk in Spanish, in Italian, in English, and that's a great network we're creating. So thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you, Mark, for being with us. And if any of you viewers think that, or if you have liked it, if you feel that it's been useful for you, if someone has come to your mind while you were watching this video and you want to share with that person, share the link, click in the like button. We will be really thankful because it will help us to make this information more extensive and to get to help people. That's really the way to go, to share and to make knowledge known and give another information different from what's out there, so that we start to regain our own power and come back to ourselves. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and see you in the next video.
Bye-bye.